The Disrupt Education vlog can be found on YouTube. To hear it in podcast form, search Disrupt Education on any of the following podcast platforms: Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or Stitcher. Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm Peter Hostrasser. I have a wonderful guest here today, Singh Kandola. I have to introduce you like your LinkedIn, so I'm going to read this right off. Author, speaker, actor, convict, lover, traveler, entrepreneur, and CEO. Rocky, you've lived a lifetime of lives. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Blessings, brother. Thank you so much for having me this morning, Peter.
Well, there was a lot of words there. So if we could unpack a little bit, I love, the hair made in India. I think of Iron Maiden here, hair made in India. But let's start there and unpack who you are and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, definitely. So Hair Made in India is a company that I founded myself about 8 to 9 years ago, maybe you could say about 10 years ago. It's a human hair extension company. We do, wholesale B2B business, and that's kind of where my legitimate entrepreneurial journey started. I had a past life, I guess, as you know as well, which kind of brings forward one of the descriptions that I put for myself on LinkedIn. As a kid, I was always like the kid selling lemonade, baseball cards, cutting grass. My father actually bought me a go-kart one year for my birthday, and I connected a wagon on the back of it and was able to cut more yards. So I kind of always had that mindset and that spirit. And, leaving out the whole 20 years in the middle, obviously, of the story. But eventually it turned into doing what I'm doing now, which is, multiple businesses, I'm looking for vacation rental companies, and anything else I can do just to kind of start to now finally give impact back. I definitely made a big impact in the hair world, help a lot of people in their business, but I want to find things more kind of aligned that fulfill me up. And what does that for me is people and vibing with people and helping people and helping them get to where they want to be very casually. It's been hard for me to call myself a speaker and a coach because I don't want to formalize it. I just want it to be more of a vibe. But, I understand to create the most impact and reach the most people, I do need to kind of structure it a little bit. So that's where I'm heading now. And those are the things I'm working on constantly and every day right now.
Our previous conversation, I always have conversations with guests before we jump in. And yeah, totally legit. You're casual speaking and really being who you are. You're gonna be great at it. So don't worry about it, man. As a matter of fact, I love sharing podcasts like this with my own classes and such and parents of kids. So let's just jump in. So there is a 20-year past. There's a past you, but there's a lot of learning in there, good and bad. So let's attempt to unpack your path of education and learning. And obviously we know that that's not always just systematic school. There's a lot of lifelong lessons and such that go in. So wherever you want to start your journey until you became the hair maiden and going into the other of India and going into the other entities, man. Where do you want to start your learning journey and let the listeners know because you have one heck of a journey and it's pretty amazing.
Definitely. Thank you, brother. Well, I guess I would be wrong and probably upset by a lot of my family if I didn't start with my father. I'm Indian, right? I'm Punjabi Indian. In Indian culture, schooling is very, very important, and parents are very, very strict on their sons and daughters to go to school and to get very high grades, as well as the curriculum in India. I'll get to this later, but I actually went there in 7th grade, and I was 4 or 5 class levels behind their curriculum at that current time. So that kind of gives you a kind of foundational overview of what it's like coming in from an Indian family in India directly educationally. Starting at a young age, our father would have boards on the wall of different languages, Punjabi and Hindi, teaching us. He would make us read encyclopedia from A to Z, and he would pause in between each book and give us tests on each one in there. So he started kind of really putting this regimented system of education, on us very heavily in the beginning. On me, my brother, my sister, all of us. However, at the same time, we were in public schools in Mississippi. So I'm smiling because, we all know, the state of our current affairs and educational system in the country, and not to down Mississippi because I have some people I really love there, but they definitely have a lot of catching up to do. And I mean, you can imagine 25 years ago, they were pretty in a pretty different situation even. So that's kind of where it started for me. Somehow, with my dad's help, and we would travel, as a family, younger as well. My dad would bring us on vacations when he was free. I would always excel at the top of my class. Like we'd get tests and I'd finish them in a couple minutes and bring them to the front. And the teachers and all the kids were like, oh, he's failing or whatever happened. I would get a straight 100 on them. And that was like a pattern throughout my entire life, even going into college. I was always, able to stay very ahead on the top of things as far as schooling goes. And the funniest part about it is I wasn't really interested in much of it. I understood that I had to do this for a certain reason, and that was for mainly my family. I didn't see what it was going to do for me yet, and that didn't come till much, much later. However, I was blessed, and some would say cursed also, to be sent around to 9 different schools, boot camps, military schools, everything from being abducted out of my bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and taken to a boot camp in Mexico, where the only schooling was to read a textbook and take the quiz at the end of the chapter. And that's how you progress through your grades in that school. Long story, but that school wasn't even accredited. They were manipulating parents and getting away with all kind of things. And now they've been shut down for, child abuse, torture, all kind of other lawsuits as well. So yeah, growing up, that was kind of like my education, was getting it from so many different places, right? From Mexico to the border of Canada to India, when I was in India for 7 months, to public schools in the South, to private schools in the South. And curriculums are different everywhere. The biggest thing I learned about all that is I learned to be adaptable to the world, to be open to how much information there is actually out there, and then how much that information can change with perspective as well. And I really saw that meeting other people in different areas of the world at a very, very young age. And it really kind of instilled a sense of me that, I'm part of a huge, huge world, and there's so many things to do in it. And I guess at a certain point, it also kind of confused me, because I'm like, wow, like, what do I do now? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, there's so much to do.
That is an amazing a journey in itself. Why the moving around? Why did you think, was there jobs going on? Were your parents trying to find a different kind of education path for you, or is it a yes and?
No, that would be a great story as well. But I was kind of a tougher to deal with child. Once again, my parents were just from India. They want to see their kids stay at home, respect their family, study, and not be out with their friends, at nighttime or anything like that. Me, I was like questioning everything, talking back about everything. I wanted to be out at night. I wanted to play tennis all day long. I didn't need to do any homework because it was done, or I would finish everything like immediately. It was just all done. And we started bumping heads really quickly. And that was the first time I got sent away, was to India, actually. And, they told me back then that, it's a cultural experience. And as I got older, my dad was like, we just couldn't handle you. And I have your brother and sister. We had to send you away for a while. But I learned a lot in India. Traveling as a kid, living alone out there, going all over the country, playing tennis tournaments, and even from the schools out there. I told you I was so far behind in the curriculum that the teachers had to figure out what to do with me in there, because you can't teach calculus 2 to a kid that hasn't even done algebra yet in America. So they would give me these scavenger hunts of the city. So I would get to learn about Punjab, my culture, what India is about. So it turned out to be a really, really cool thing, and actually how I'm so confident in my business now about India. Because if I didn't go there as a child, didn't get to go there as an adult, I probably wouldn't be as confident to go to these temples and these factories and make these connections and meet these people. And if you hear that, that kind of shows my educational journey. I learned to be around people, to make conversation, to trade, to find out how I can relate to them, and then find out how we can do business together and serve each other with value. And that's kind of it kind of happened by itself. I didn't know how it was going to happen like that. Other than that, before that, I wanted to be actually a lawyer. That was my main thing. So after I got back from India and then got sent, I can get into the whole story. I got sent to Mexico, the WWASP. I'm sure your listeners know about Paris Hilton. She recently did a very big documentary about one of the schools that she attended that was in the U.S., very similar to mine, where, you go behind these big brick walls, they shave your head, they rip your clothes off, you don't talk to anybody in the outside world, you don't know when they're going to leave, you're physically abused, sexually abused, tortured, waking up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning in the rain to stand outside and count and do push-ups, and waking up on the floor with pots and pans banging on you. And, and I'm just skimming the surface. Thankfully, gratefully, my story of abuse there doesn't even compare to some of my brothers and sisters stories they had in there, and some, aren't as open to talk about it. But that is actually a place where my education went down. I didn't really learn much educational stuff there. I was just reading a book and taking a test, and it was a mind game. So I went to three of these such facilities over the next 3 years. And thankfully, my father had put so much in me before that, and I traveled and seen so many different things, and I was getting an education and experience from the world. And we can talk about how, like, in my point, having to be coming from such a place of survival versus thriving in those kind of schools, I learned certain parts of life that, might be, helpful, but at that age aren't totally necessary. We want to kind of be free and just live our child lives and do what we want to do at that age. And that part is kind of stunted for me. So when college started, after all these boot camps and all these schools, after getting kidnapped and took in there again, when college started, I didn't care about anything except, being a man. And for me, that was giving a middle finger to authority, partying, girls, drugs, drinking, everything. And I dove headfirst into that. College, I graduated with a 3.86 GPA. I don't even know how, because I carried the same, kind of things over from high school as I did to college. I was fast, I was quick. I didn't really need to study much, And then once I got to human A and P or class or stat 2, where I don't really want to study this hard, I was like, nope, I'm dropping this class and going somewhere else. And I wound up in philosophy and really enjoying philosophy and what that meant as far as criminal justice and reading cases and arguing cases, and eventually wanted to do criminal law and come back to Alabama. College and that whole area is where I learned a lot. And I have to say this, and I don't want to discourage anyone from going to school, because I think there's a lot of value in going to college, but I don't think that value comes from that piece of paper degree or too much of what you learn, unless you are going a professional route, like engineer, medical, legal, things like that. Otherwise, it's a very good experience. If you have the money to afford, if your parents are going to pay for it, if you're not going to incur a lot of debt over it, it's a very good experience to have. And I lived mine to the fullest. I was a freshman for almost 4 years. So it took me 7.5 to graduate, finally. I did fraternities, extracurriculars, a lot of things where I have a lot of connections of people, small things that I can, kind of reach out to here and there, which I'm grateful for. But my biggest lessons in college came from, and this is scary to say sometimes too, is the mistakes I made, while I was there, and learning about life and people, as well as learning how to finish a class, right? A lot of times people go to college, I want the experience, but when you actually finish it, you get the grade, you go for it. Okay, you have that sense of I accomplished it and I'm there as well. But also during that time is when I dove in, as I said, to the drugs and the violence, and started selling drugs, doing drugs. And within a couple of years, I wound myself up with a big boy, distribution of cocaine, controlled substances charge. 7 years of my life, back and forth, in and out of jail, in and out of rehab, in and out of house arrest, until finally, I graduated college while I was going through all this. They were tired of me. They're like, you know what, you're not listening. You're smoking weed every day or sneaking off to Mexico. We don't even know if they thought, honestly, I was cheating in class or something like that. Cause they were like, we see, we're tracking you every day. And you don't study, you're not doing anything. And anyway, long story short, I wound up in prison, and that was Alabama State Prison. And it was tough. My life before that, boot camps and everything I was used to, kind of put me at an advantage towards someone who'd never been to anything like that before. And once again, scary to say, because I don't want to ever encourage anybody to go to prison. I mean? I learned a lot. There. And I believe the power of these conversations, on your podcast as well, is there's a couple of different kinds of people in the world. And some people learn from, their own mistakes. Me, I have a hard head. I have to fall, and then I learn. And then there's others who can really hear that from someone else and really embody that and kind of be like, you know what, that's not the path I'm going to go on. And I hope that we can, kind of reach those right now, because prison is not fun. It's not cool. There's no street cred behind it. No matter how tough you are and how much you can handle it, which I can handle it, it sucks. There's no way around it. And not only does it suck in prison, it sucks when you get out and you're trying to make a life for yourself, whether it's a job, a career, a business, a loan, whatever it is. You have a little bit of, a more difficult time. And if you're an entrepreneur and that's where you're trying to go, that's the least, nothing like that will stop you, and that hasn't stopped me. It's actually given me motivation to know that, hey, tunnel vision, this is my path. I'm not looking for any job. I know what I'm doing. I need to get it right. And, from there and from college a little bit and from military school and the boot camps I went, I learned to give myself structure as an entrepreneur. I learned to give myself my own structure, not from a boss, not from anyone else. And I really, really I'm grateful for the hells that I went through as a kid, because it taught me inadvertently even that structure and that discipline, if I give it to myself in a loving way, can actually take me beyond my wildest dreams.
Thank you so much for sharing that journey. It is, I know there's so much more underneath that, but if I was going to unpack that, and I'm certainly not a psychologist, but as an educator, somebody who's like understanding, like you learned how to rely on yourself and learn yourself through the structure came early with family, and then hell was there. And so who was supposed to be teaching you obviously was not, in several, very difficult, challenging, just, unethical, just terrible ways. And now you're an entrepreneur because you're not going to rely on anybody else. However, you're going to also share that story with others. And I can see, first, before we go into my education question, and I know I'm going to give your links and everything to everybody, but I know we have a lot of parents out there. Seriously, when I first heard your story, Rocky, and we were talking, I was like, wait a minute, I got like 1,000 young people who need to hear this. So just a quick note before we go into the big disrupt education question, you all want to check out the links below and how to connect with Rocky. He really is going to be able to speak and connect, should you work with him that way. So let's jump into education, my friend. You have seen it all. Like I gotta tell you, like out of almost all of my guests, I would say you have probably seen the most. So with that being said, man, if you could build education, it's a big question. What are maybe one or two ginormous must-haves in that education system, school, whatever you want to call it? What does that look like to you, Rocky?
I think before we even get all the way into it, I think the first part is understanding as a whole, as a community, everybody, that the current system and curriculum education that we have in place is not working, overall. Especially when you get down, like I said, Mississippi public schools and even certain other areas. And it shouldn't be like that. In the country we live in America, everyone, at the younger age should have that kind of chance to be like, you know what, we're getting taught the right things. We're going the right direction. We have a chance equally to get there. And I can see the difference between going from public school in Mississippi to private school in Alabama, just like night and day. I was just like, wow, even the way the teachers would approach the students, even, it was just totally different. And I don't even know if the pay, is much different. There's just a more prestigious type of place. But I do believe that's the first thing, is a discussion open about, hey, this is not working. People are coming out at 18 and not knowing what to do. We're basically making them almost slaves to the state and to the hamster turning wheel, of get married, get a job, 9 to 5, do this, do that, end up at 60, retire, this, and which is great if that's what someone wants to do, but we need to really encourage people at a young age to see different options and see the world. And I think, once again, and it's a huge question, I think that really starts with, they say it takes a village to raise a kid. The community is closer to home, and what are they doing? What are they doing together? Where are they going? What trips are they taking? For me, educating my child, I want to be able to have a backpack on and take my child around the world. And of course, I'm going to make sure that they know how to add and read and things like that. But I have a friend now that does the same thing, and his daughter is smarter, just ridiculously smart, so smart, knows the regular, what's the state, what's the capital of, this state or that country. She knows those things as well. So I believe that we got to get away from this curriculum of read this, memorize it, take a test, get the grade, pass, you're smart, fail, you're not smart. It's almost like that, the game of life at a younger age, where we have to people get weeded out for certain things at jobs. They've had this in their past, automatic no. They've had this, automatic no. And then when you get there to higher education, it's just it makes you want to cry. How does anybody do good? The debt incurred by people, by college kids that are so excited and they have that motivation, and then they don't understand taxes, life, business practices, like other things that'll happen. Like, they don't understand some of them even how to like go to the DMVs and get licenses or go to file paperwork. And that's the kind of stuff they need to be learning how to do, like life practical stuff, and let them choose, like. And once again, I could like go in so many circles. I've been like to private school, I've been in military school, I've seen so many different countries and different curriculums and ways of teaching, and they all try to follow this like set standard way. Like every single human, every single child is the same thing, the same person, and they're all going to have to go one way. And that's just not the case. Like back in the day, like we had like hunters and gatherers and this and that, the way life was, because like if we didn't, we wouldn't survive. But now we live like in abundance of technology, of food, of everything. There's so many ways for people to make a living and live a fulfilled life that are not the traditional get a 9 to 5, get this, get married, get a career, and go that way. And we're taking away from ourselves and our future and the ability to grow and expand as humanity. The less we kind of cut off these kids' access and abilities to these amazing things. I know, man, I wish when I was a kid, all this talk around entrepreneurism and all this stuff was going on, because like I would be on it, and I couldn't even imagine where I'd be now. So now it's exciting to me when I see like 13-year-old kids make $50,000 a month on mining Bitcoin, and they learn how to do it themselves. Like I was like, well, that's awesome, I love it. So like we have to kind of adapt to technology. Every other area of our lives, we're starting to adapt. Why is the education system still sitting, that far back?
Get out of the way of the student, and build on their interests. I'm lucky enough to actually be teaching entrepreneurship. I love it. I go into class every day just, smiling. We count our wins. We get people in the mindset. And that's hard because we have to change the mindset. I wanted to ask, out of all the schools, was there one that stood out, like that was kind of, hey, this one? Or was it just basically, because you mentioned in there that they were all kind of in this weird structure of the same thing. Was there one that stood out, or was there none, or was it pretty much all the same, just different levels of hell?
I really love that you asked that question, because I don't think I've ever been asked. I get asked a lot of questions. I don't think that's been one of them, and that's really cool. Let me think about this. My first school at elementary, right, was a tight-knit, small community. As I said, it takes a village. A town of 25,000 people, a very small elementary school. I was into ideas like gifted level program, as well as my regular, first, second, third grade courses. And I remember that I was just growing so fast because there was so much personal connection. Miss Penton, I remember her name to this day. Like my Miss Shirley Hunter, my teacher, my principal. Like we all lived nearby each other. All the kids, like we all knew each other. We all knew whose kid like was a parent and stuff like that. And it was just a very tight knit group. We Easter egg hunted together. We played tennis together. We went sailing together. And that's where I felt the most like, oh wow, like I'm a human. I'm a part of society. Like I need to contribute something to society because I'm getting so much from it. And when you really make someone feel like that, you don't have to ask them to do anything. You don't have to ask them to pay taxes or this and that. Like they want to contribute, right? Because they're a part of it. So that was third grade. From then, the private schools in Alabama were just horrible. Whole different discussion of racism and craziness. The military school, I learned, and once again, I have to say, like, I'm very grateful for these places. As a kid going through it, I hated them. I was very upset, but as an adult looking back, the lessons I took from the experiences, not necessarily from the education, but from the experiences, were invaluable. Until then, after that, the next time I really felt a different education where I learned something was India. And, that was really cool. It was really, it wasn't as friendly of an approach to education. It was very like, you have to learn this. It was very like strict and standard. But it was just such, like, once again, the community, the kids were so like, yes, like how do you do this? I want to learn this. I want to learn this. That it was just exciting to do it. And then for me, they gave me the added scavenger hunt thing. And I, as an 11-year-old kid, alone in India, got to travel around and learn about my culture and my city from such a different perspective as an 11-year-old kid alone that's, born in America, that I could say that was the best, education right there. And then I got to give it to Professor Hillman, my philosophy teacher in college. The way he taught, and once again, he brings us together as a group. He brings that give and take, that discussion, that back and forth in every one of his philosophy and religion and theology classes. And he really, really really, really finally for once after 6, 7 years in college, it's like, yes, I like what he's saying. I like the way he's teaching, and I'm interested in learning about, the philosopher Socrates, and studying it and actually, talking about it.
Yeah, I heard that in your change of education, the humanistic approach, like really understanding. It seemed like you missed a lot of that, and huge gaps in your. So in your path, and you have become this entrepreneur. And you've mentioned this before about experience, just the experience and not the learning. But as a matter of fact, I think that's what you said. Let's put the experience in the learning, right? How did you experience becoming an entrepreneur and learn from that?
I think Gary Vee says this a lot. Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a big guy on social media. I followed him for a while as well. He says it, and it's kind of harsh, right? Especially, you don't want to be too harsh on the younger ones. Like, entrepreneurs are born, right? That's what he says. I'm mixed feelings about it. For me personally, I was born like this. Once again, like lemonade stands when I was a kid, selling candy, baseball cards, trying to cut grass. Started my first business, talent management when I was like 19 or 20, somewhere 18, 19, 20. It kept going from there. The biggest thing that entrepreneurs learn from, and once again, is the experience. Is the amount of times we try and it doesn't work. And it gets to, and this is when the entrepreneur is really born. If he isn't born at birth, he's born when he tries, and keeps getting failing. And eventually, it'll click. For me, when I got out of high school into college, I don't want to ever, and this is like kids, adults, no one go this way, selling drugs, right? It's not the right path to go, obviously, energetically, lovingly, or for yourself. Anyway, I did that, right? And I did that with that same mindset of I want to be an entrepreneur, but I also have a chip on my shoulder. I'm mad at the world. I only want to do what, everyone doesn't like. So that's kind of why I went headfirst into that. And it sounds funny to say almost, but I was really good at it, right? Because I'm good with people. I'm good with my schedule. I'm good at being on time. I'm good with numbers. And I know how to, get a product and move a product. And I kind of really took that over to like my next business. When I first started Hair Made in India, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I bought this amount of hair for $10,000. I need to make $20,000 on it. Like I didn't know how to do my accounting, my cash flow, or anything. I was just doing my best to like keep everything together. And I learned as I went along. When I first started 8 years ago, there still wasn't this much conversation around entrepreneurship. So my resources for help were still somewhat limited. And it was frustrating. It was really frustrating until I started getting more on YouTube and started learning, there's a lot of information out there from people that kind of went my path. And those became my mentors, the people I started looking up to and learning from. And then I found my own way. I took a little bit of piece from Ralph Smart, from Gary Vaynerchuk, from Tim Ferriss, and made my own little, thing with it. And I'm nowhere near perfect. I still make mistakes in business. I still am not the best at accounting. I still put things off sometimes, but it's a growth process, right? And I'm not in a rush to get to point B. I like doing what I do in the business. I like the process it takes to get there. I like when something happens, I have to reshift and fix everything, and so it's really helpful to me. So the one thing I would say, if you are in school and you're going to entrepreneurship, definitely pay attention in your spreadsheets class, in your math class. That'll help out a lot. That'll be two definitely big things that will help out a lot for later on.
Usually I tell my entrepreneurship students math becomes really interesting when you put a dollar sign around it. So that's usually when – yeah. So look, Rocky, I want to give you a chance to let the audience know how can they connect with you. You've got a great story. There's an author piece to you. There's a speaker piece to you. Obviously giving back, and you are mentoring a lot right now of parents and listeners of the podcast. But I'm going to guess part of you is going to grow there even further. How can people connect with you and meet up with Rocky, whether it's in the hair business or all the other things that you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to say I'm pretty much like one of the easiest people in the world to find. My full name is Rocky Singh Kandola. But on my website, you can actually find all the businesses I'm currently involved in, everything from my acting stuff to the vacation rental company, to the hair company, and the CBD company I do as well. My direct contact information is on there also. If you want to talk about business, definitely give me a call. We can talk. If you're looking for just someone to listen to, or talking about life, or about some of this younger stuff you want to talk about, or just kind of go back and forth on, please give me a call. That's kind of like where my heart is, especially if you're younger and you're confused, you're struggling, you're not sure which way to go, and you just need someone to bounce some ideas off of that have maybe been through the same things you have or similar. I'm 100% open to that, and it filled my heart up if you reach out to me and ask for some help or just ask for somebody to talk to.
I want to thank you so much for hanging out and telling your journey. I'm going to go back. I know when I'm editing this and I'm like, this is going to be awesome, because there are so many bits and pieces of knowledge, and your journey is helping others. So thank you so much for sharing it.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all for listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Check out all the links below to connect with our guests and connect with me. And if you have anything else to take away from this conversation, it is the experiences are learning moments. Thank you, Rocky. We'll talk to everybody later.